I love books that make you think. However, normally I don't go for thrillers. But in this video, I'm going to be listening to some of the top psychological thriller books that are out right now, the ones that are super popular, see if they're worth the hype as someone who doesn't really listen to this genre very often. Now, I have carefully crafted a list of 3 psychological thriller books that sounded interesting to me and were being raved about online by book reviewers. I feel like these books have some really neat elements that make them not like your typical standard psychological thriller, and that might even make them appeal to a broader audience than your general thriller seekers. And the third book, it just happens to be set very close to home. Now let's start with the first book I selected, which is Wild Dark Shores. So I decided I wanted to read this book after I heard the synopsis a couple different times, and it just really intrigued me. The entire book follows a family with the last name Salt, and they are living on an Antarctic island. And the dad is a caretaker for a seed bank. Now this bank is actually designed to hold the seeds that are going to essentially save the world in the event of like apocalyptic type events. So if there was natural disasters, if there was war-torn country, any of those plants that were destroyed, there would be seeds in the seed bank in order to replenish them at a later time, whether it is in that same area or a different area of the world. That way these species, if something were to happen that was catastrophic, would not be lost forever. And at the beginning of this book, there is this huge storm that is happening on the island and a body washes ashore. Now currently this family is the only ones living on the island. All of the researchers have left because the island is considered no longer inhabitable because of the rising sea levels. Basically the island is just disappearing because as the seas rise, there's less and less island left. And so the family that's here is finishing out the task of packing up the seed bank, and then they are also going to be evacuating in 6 weeks. So while they're planning to do this mysterious woman shows up, and now they have to figure out what to do with her and why is she even there, because they're not close to anything else. You don't accidentally happen upon this island. So what is her purpose? Why was she seeking out the island? And they're trying to answer the question that is the mystery of her. We quickly discover that our mystery woman, his name is Rowan, and the man who is the caretaker, his name is Dominic, and both of them are keeping a lot of secrets. And so far I understand the hype of this book. I hope it keeps up. Let me show you where I'm at. So I'm currently on chapter 21, and according to Storygraph, that is 33% of the way through this book. I did not expect this book to have so many different points of view, given the fact that this is on a deserted island and there's not that many characters, but all of the characters on the island get a piece of that point of view. So you have Dominic and Rowan, which are our main 2 characters because they're the adults. But then we have Finn and Rafe and Ollie, which are the children that are living on the island with Dominic. You actually get their point of view too, and I think it's been very cool to see even having the youngest kid, Ollie, in there and how he incorporates to the story. His chapters are some of my favorite because they're just fun to listen to and just the way they're written. The narrator does a fantastic job. So far I'm really liking it. One of the things that makes me know that this is a good audiobook is I'm finding things to do that I can also listen to my audiobook while I'm doing, like cooking. Normally I don't like to cook, but right now I'm intrigued enough that I am wanting to cook so I can listen to my audiobook and figure out what's gonna happen next. I actually had a moment while I was cooking last night listening to this where I like gasped out loud because there was like a little bit of a plot twist happening, and I was like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen, but like that makes sense. I'm not used to thrillers, so maybe if you listen to thrillers a lot, you probably would have been like, yeah, I saw that coming. When I look back, I'm like, I should have seen that coming, but I didn't, and it was great. I loved it. By the way, I am listening to this audiobook over on Everand. It is my favorite Audible alternative and just my favorite way to listen to audiobooks in general, which is why I'm an affiliate with them. So if you're looking for a new way to listen to popular audiobook titles, right now you can get a free trial, which allows you to get one of these books that I'm listening to in this video for free, or whichever other audio or ebook that you're wanting to grab. So if you're interested, you can use the link down in my description below, or you can scan the QR code on your screen right now and start your free trial. Okay, with that, I'm going to go find some random task around the house that I can do while listening to an audiobook so I can figure out what's going to happen next. I'll check in soon. I have done done a lot of random chores and laundry and errands in order to get to this point, but I now have a little bit over 2.5 hours left in this audiobook. 2 hours and 33 minutes left. There has been a lot of things that are happening, but at the same time, it's very slow. I'm enjoying it regardless. This book really focuses a lot on climate change and how it's affecting this island. That's why they're leaving. And so there's a lot of facts about the creatures and animals in this area, both plants and animals, that are being affected by climate change. A lot of that information is actually coming from the kids, which I think is a very interesting way to do it. It's like showing their excitement and their love and their passion for, like, one of the kids really likes whales, another one really likes the seals, another one is very into plants. And so you're getting to learn about all these different animals and plants from those kids' perspective and just hearing their excitement as they talk about it. And then you have the drama, like the adult drama of there are people who are unaccounted for. There are things that are found that you're like, this doesn't add up to the story that was being told. And I still think at this point, there are a lot of secrets that are left to be uncovered, and one main big secret that's been hinted at. And I think it's gonna blow everything up. But so far I am enjoying this. Like I said, it is a little bit slow in between some of like the reveals that move the plot forward. But as somebody who really does enjoy nature, I am not upset about learning these new facts about some of these magnificent creatures that are discussed in this book. I will say I got to a part that was like very suspenseful, and I loved the way it was written, because if you're reading the text, I'm sure it would be very short chapters, but we're talking like 30 seconds to less than 5 minutes for like several chapters in a row as you're getting the different perspectives of the individuals that are involved in that incident and like how they are seeing what is happening. So it almost slows down a very impactful part of the book. So you can see like this person is seeing it this way. This is what this person's thinking about as it's happening. And I just thought that was a really cool way to show this event and how it's impacting each of these people differently. And I was actually listening to this section while I was running errands, and I just kind of like sat in my car for a bit because I didn't want to get out and then have to start over and like jump back into the scene. And that's how you know it's a good audiobook, if you sit in your car while you're running errands because you don't want to stop listening. I have a feeling the things that are going to be revealed in the last 2.5 hours is probably why it's gotten 5 stars. Because like right now, I would say it's like a solid 4-star read for me. Like I'm enjoying it. It is a little bit slow here and there, but we'll see what the ending is. If there's a twist, I'm sure there's got to be a twist. Because like I think I know what happened, but it's a psychological thriller, so that can't be actually what happens. Something else has to have occurred that I'm not thinking about or anticipating. And I'm excited to see what that is. So off to find some more chores for me to keep listening. It's only a few hours later, and I continued to listen after I recorded my update. While I was cooking, there was a huge twist, which I was expecting because it is a thriller. And after that twist, I was like, I need to figure out how this ends and what happens. So I ate dinner with my husband, and then afterwards, he's outside making a cabinet. So if you hear something in the background, he's building a cabinet. He has a saw going. But I just continued to listen and do chores around the house until I ran out of chores that I was willing to do, and then just colored until I finished the end. I'm gonna end up giving this book 4 stars. Like I said earlier, there were some parts that were slow, but the main reason I'm giving it 4 stars is I did not like the ending. I understand why the ending was the way it was. As a cozy reader, I like happy endings, and this was definitely I don't want to say it's not a happy ending. Well, it's not a happy ending. It's a bittersweet ending. And this book is about climate concerns, and there is a note at the end talking about the different elements of this book and what they were based on, which I thought was really interesting. Overall, I think this book had a really good message. It did keep me intrigued. Obviously, I listened to the last couple of hours just all the way through when normally I would be doing other things with my evening. But I did want to share this quote. I really enjoyed it. What is the use of safety if it deprives you of everything else? One of the characters in this book, she, throughout this whole whole book has all these different little fears that have held her back from doing things in life. And in this book, she's exploring letting go of some of that fear. And I just thought that quote really like sums up the personal journey for that character. I feel like that's not a spoiler, but just gives you an idea of like one of the themes from a personal standpoint. Grief is a big theme, how to handle emotions in grief, what it means to be a parent, the importance of maintaining our climate, how isolation affects a person. Like there's a lot of different themes in this book. And as I say them out loud, it makes sense that there is not a happy ending to this book. I'm really glad I listened to it. It makes me very excited to listen to the next one that I have on my list, which I want to listen to a little bit to make sure that I want to continue before I tell you what the title is. But it is now past my bedtime and I have to work in the morning. So I will talk to you soon and we will pick out the next one. Now it is time to introduce you to the second book in the psychological thriller list, and that is The God of the Woods. This book is by Liz Moore, and I'm very, very excited about this one. It has been on my TBR for a while. Because it was a psychological thriller, I was like, I don't know if I'm actually gonna like this, so I put it off until I had like several of them I wanted to listen to at once, and so far I'm hooked. The main thing I know is that Barbara is missing, which is not a spoiler because you find out that Barbara is missing like immediately, but unfortunately, an hour and a half in, that's about all I know. We're getting a lot of the backstory behind the camp where Barbara was at when she went missing, as well as her family and the dynamics there, because I know that there's a lot to do with her family and why she goes missing. That's definitely a part of it. Haven't got super far to figure out exactly how that's working out, but I have like 13 more hours to listen, so there'll be plenty of time for them to tell me all about it. But the premise of this book is you have a girl, she's at camp, and she goes missing. She is part of a very wealthy family that actually owns the camp, and her brother had previously gone missing. And so we don't quite understand like why the brother went missing or why Barbara went missing, but this book has multiple points of view. So we have had some of the campers and counselors and Barbara's mom. Like there's a lot of different people that we're getting perspectives of. It is one narrator. It's actually one of the same narrators that was in Wild Dark Shore. There were 4 narrators for that one. I don't know if I said that earlier, but I can tell you that the suspense is there. Why is Barbara missing? What role did her family play in this? I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. You know, I've got to be honest with you. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking when I decided, you know, I should go on a walk in the woods while I listen to a thriller about kids lost in the woods. But here we are. Currently 9 hours into The God of the Woods, which is 62% according to my story graph here, and I have mixed emotions. It's taken me 17 days to get to this point, and I will say part of it was I wasn't feeling well for a bit, so I wasn't going on my audiobook walks or doing as many chores around the house because I didn't feel well, but it also hasn't made me want to listen to it while I was laying down relaxing. This book has so many points of view, and even from the last time that I did my check-in, there have been more. There are new characters emerging and we are getting their points of view. You have no idea who they are until they like pop in with that point of view. Some of them are from the past, some of them are from the present, and all of them are building the story of what happened to not only Barbara, but also Barbara's brother. And at this point, I feel like I know nothing. There's some suspects at this point, but it's too early for those suspects to be the actual people who have done the thing. I'm also not convinced that the same person was involved in the brother as the current Barbara situation going on. I'm very skeptical of that, although it is possible. There was also a moment listening to this where I got so incredibly angry at one of the characters for things that he was doing. This is definitely a book to watch the trigger warnings on, especially when it comes to abuse, because I don't have children, but even as somebody who does not have children, who has children in their life that they love, things that were happening made me very, very angry. that those things were happening. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to include spoilers. There were some very difficult moments to listen to. At no point did I want to stop reading this book as far as like DNF and nothing like that. There's just a lot going on, and I do think listening to the audiobook, especially if it's going to take you a while, may be challenging just from the timeline perspective. I think I still have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but sometimes I wish I could go back if I stop mid-chapter, because some of the chapters are like 30 minutes long. And so if I'm just doing like my normal commute, which is 10 to 15 minutes, I'm not going to get through that chapter. And if I don't finish it that day on my way back home, who knows when I'm going to listen again. That's just for my current listening style. It could be a little bit challenging if you're going to be starting and stopping to remember like, okay, are we in the past? Are we in the present? Whose point of view is this? Just to like catch up on where you are. But overall, for a multi-point of view book, I think they have done very well at making sure it still feels cohesive. Like the story is moving forward, even though we're bouncing back from the past and the present. But 62% in, I have no idea what happened to Barbara Van Laar. But we need to find out. I finished God of the Woods, and let me tell you, I am so glad that I did. This book had such a great ending. I did not want to put it down. I just like laid on the couch and listened to it for like the last hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. It was a long time. I now know what happened to Barbara and her brother, and I'm not going to share any spoilers, but I think it was a fantastic ending, very, very satisfying. So I'm giving it 4.5 stars. The reason it wasn't a 5-star read for me was just for the fact that it took me so long to get through it. Like there's a lot of things to sort through, and there were a few times that I was a little bit confused because of the changing of the characters and the places so frequently. However, it's overall a great read, and as somebody who does not typically read psychological thrillers, this is one that I think I would recommend. Now on to the next one. It is now time for thriller number 3. This book is called All the Colors of the Dark. It's by Chris Whitaker, and it's actually set in Missouri. And when I first picked up this book, it was talking about like being set in the Ozarks. And I would say that's like kind of true, kind of not, because the more I was reading this book, I'm currently 25% of the way through, the more they were talking about places that are like near where I live, or actually where I live. It's like talking about being on the Missouri River, Columbia, Boonville, and this is like mid-Missouri, and I would not classify where mid-Missouri is as the Ozarks. Technically, you're at the very edge of the Ozarks here, but when I think Ozarks, I think more of southern Missouri or mid-southern Missouri. And there was also one pet peeve of mine in here where one of the main people, which I don't know if it was on purpose, like this was a lie where he said he was, and it's a thriller, so maybe it was intentionally supposed to be a lie. But he said that he took like these pictures of bears in a river that wasn't far away, and there were salmon there. Salmon are not native to Missouri. So as somebody who has grown up in a family of fishermen, I would not classify myself as a fisherman. I attempt occasionally. But as somebody who grew up with family who fishes a lot across the state, that didn't settle well with me. So aside from the fact this is a fictional town, but real places are mentioned and it's not quite accurate, I'm enjoying the book. The story is good. I think it's very interesting because the book is told from the perspective of a couple of kids, and so unreliable narration going on here. And I will say, even though it's perspective of a child, there are some more mature thoughts there than I think if they'd fully embraced the childlike state, but it's still very good. I will also say at this point, I find the timeline to be very interesting in the pacing. It's not the direction I anticipated for it to go at all. So this book follows those kids as there are girls going missing, another kid, a boy goes missing, and just the events that happen surrounding his disappearance. And that's all I'm going to say because I feel like everything else is a spoiler of some kind, and I don't know how things are intertwined quite yet, but I'm only 25% through, which means there's plenty of book and time left to do so because this is like a 14.5-hour book. So I'm gonna go find something that keeps me entertained, probably not for the 10 plus hours I have left, but at least for a couple of them. through all the colors in the dark, and I honestly can say this book is not what I expected, and I have no idea where things are going. And it may be because this is not the genre that I normally read. And so when I read a romance book or a fantasy book, like halfway through the book, you pretty much know the direction they're going. Are we going to war? Who's going to be together? What objective are they trying to solve at the end of this book? And for this one, there's like a lot of things that I thought like the direction the book was going, it's already resolved those issues. Now, granted, I have been reading for over 6.5 hours, almost 7 hours now. So it's not incredibly surprising that they've resolved some of the lines that were like going on at the beginning, but I truly don't know what's going to happen now. There's like one loose end, but I'm like, are we really going to play this game for 8 more hours because I'm going to lose interest? I haven't lost interest yet, but also like nothing is happening. Nothing substantial. And I shouldn't say nothing is happening. Something substantial happened, but then it was almost like glossed over. And I was like, wait a second, we're not going to stick around and talk about this? We're just going to like pretend that it didn't happen and fast forward a few years? It's very confusing to me. I'm going to keep listening. I want to know what happens. I did find it very interesting. All the colors piece has to do, I think, with the main character painting missing people, and I don't know what I expected. I just didn't expect that to be the direction it was going, but it is fascinating. And I wish I had more to tell you that wasn't a spoiler, but I don't. So that's what I've got for you. I'm going to keep listening, and I'll touch base again, hopefully when I have more answers. I finished All the Colors in the Dark, and I did not like it. That's not 100% true. It was just a difficult book for me to get through. Aside from my qualms about the state of Missouri specifically, which I think some of them were addressed, it does seem like they were further south than I originally thought, which would make sense because then they would actually be in the Ozarks, and that would be okay. And I did enjoy the fact that because I lived in Missouri, when they were talking about like traveling through towns in the state or different things that they went to go see, I understood where they were and what they were talking about because I have been living in Missouri most of my life, and I've been in mid-Missouri since 2015, aside from a 13-month stint in Texas for residency. I've seen a lot of the state. It was great to hear different aspects or talking about places that like I go. They were talking about like Rockbridge State Park, which is down the road, and they were in Columbia, and I just enjoyed that aspect. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And overall, the book is well written. The character development is really well rounded for the two main characters that we're following. Both grow up in this book. Like this book spans like decades of their life. But there are things that were done in this book that just drove me crazy. The pacing is very odd because the chapters are really short. And I am somebody who likes a shorter chapter. I like a 10 to 15 page chapter. That seems doable. You can do it in an easy sitting. If you have like 20 minutes, it's not hard to read that amount and feel like you finished something. But some of these chapters that I was listening to the audiobook are literally like a minute long. So they would have to be like a few sentences, a paragraph. They're just not a lot of content. And it just makes the pacing a little bit odd. The biggest pet peeve I have about the writing is the fact that the biggest moments in the book do not happen on page. There's like this build up to what's going to happen. You're foreshadowing the things that are going to happen. And it's basically like, and what happens next? They never could turn back. Woe is me. This is going to be a big deal. And then we cut 2 or 3 years in the future. Not always years, but like at least months. And you're like, are you freaking kidding me? We're going to open that door and stop the chapter and fast forward. And then you have to wait for me listening like 5 or 10 minutes into this fast forward chapter to figure out what happened. Sometimes you have to do 2 or 3 chapters because they're very short to even figure out what happened after they opened the door or the event that they're building up to happens. Put it on the page. Put it on the page. It's a choice, and it's a choice that I personally did not like, and it may be because I am traditionally a fantasy or a romance reader, and so both of those genres put everything on the page. Not always, but like the majority of the time, the biggest things that happen in the book are on the page, and here, until you get to the very end, the biggest things that happen are not on the page, or in this case, on the audiobook, because I listened to the audio. It's very much annoyed me if you didn't notice. I will say the ending was good. It was like a full circle moment. You really go back to their childhood and like wrap up the story that way. And I think that that's beautiful. There were some big things that I thought about the characters that we thought were true, and then they kind of glossed over it on the end. It was crazy because this book was 14 hours and 37 minutes. At about 4.5 hours left, I was like, can we just wrap this up? And then we get to the last part where they're getting ready to wrap it up, and it felt rushed. And I'm I'm like, you could have done so much with that last 4.5 hours to make the pacing better, where we build up and then we get some of that closure in some of those details without it feeling rushed through. I'm giving it 3 stars because for the majority of the book, I really liked it. I did like how the ending happened. And like I said, the writing is really beautiful. And there's a lot of metaphors with the painting that goes on and just reflection on how people end up in the situations they end up in, what life circumstances that we don't know about makes a person do what they do. And also just how bad luck sometimes can lead to defining moments in your life. There's a lot of great life lessons and a lot of beautiful things in here. Right, Luna? Beautiful things. But it just wasn't for me, so 3 stars it is. And with that, we have closed the chapter of psychological thrillers. Will I return to this genre? Probably. I actually have another one on my list that you will be seeing sometime in the winter. Is it one that I'm going to revisit often? Probably not. Well, I did enjoy these books. They took me a lot longer to get through, and I feel like we're overall less enjoyable than the fantasy reads that I have, and I think it's just because the fantasy books are a little bit more lighthearted, like it's not real, and sometimes these books are just a little too real and spot on for the type of people that are in the world for you to escape. So for me, I think this is definitely a genre to go back to when I'm not interested in escaping from real life. But overall, I enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these, if there are any thrillers that you think, oh, this will make you love the genre even more. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye. Say bye, Luna. Bye. Say bye-bye.